Hey buddy, why is my car in the air? We'll talk about that in a minute. Quick recap of the September Autocross event with the Martin Sports Car Club out at Lake Tech. 31st out of 106 cars in raw time. Won the class, won the Cam C class, so that's good. But 31st out of 106, not quite the top 20 I wanted, but the good news is as far as being in the top 20, it was only a half second difference. From 31st to 20th was a half second. So I mean, it was like right there. So we're close. The car had a slight understeer, but overall it actually drove really well. But it just has that little bit of an understeer. So that's part of what today is going to be about. The rear end was way more planted than I expected, so that was nice. So in light of that, what I'm going to probably do is adjust the sway bar. So I'll talk about that in a second. Today, Betty White gets ready for the state championship. That's the whole point of today. That's the whole point of it being up in the air. The first part we're going to deal with is in the rear, dealing with the lower control arms. This is going to be a pass or fail video, so I'm going to show it warts and all. That right there is a control arm for a 1LE Camaro 5th gen. I've got another one, obviously, so I'm going to be putting both of those on the rear. The goal of that is simply to raise the rear end up a little bit off of that back tire. When I measured it this morning, you've got a wheel gap from, we'll go right here. Your wheel gap is very extended right now because the car's in the air, but from right there, that line, to right there, the fender, it's about a little more than 1.5 inches. And when the car compresses over like heavy bumps, it comes down. And I mean, you can't even tell. It's not even showing on the tire, but it does rub just a little bit. Oddly enough, the other side is about a quarter of an inch higher on the passenger side, so it doesn't have that rub. So the car's a little lopsided, but not bad. I guess that's just how the spring's settled. But the whole goal, not only are these beefed up, but the bolt hole for the shock is slightly higher than the stock G8 control arm. So the idea, according to the internet, this will be a lesson as to whether you can believe everything you see on the internet or not, but the idea is to put these on. The shock's going to mount slightly higher, which is going to lift the rear end up just a little bit, and in theory, keep me from rubbing over big bumps. We'll see how that works. Also, while I'm back there, I'm going to take the sway bar from full soft to medium. Got 3 selections, so we're going to go from full to the medium. Before it was full tight, and that was fun to drive, but after we got this last alignment, they took it to full soft just to see what happens, and it's great, but I'm hoping that little change in the sway bar will help bring a little bit more neutrality to the car and dial out a little bit of understeer. We'll see. Next, brakes. That'll be on the front. Changing up from the drilled and slotteds in the front, which they're not that old. I mean, they've got probably 15,000 miles on them. But the problem is I bought these fancy-dancy Carbotech pads, and these fancy-dancy Carbotech pads will not go to those rotors because those rotors have a groove in them already from the pads that are on there. So, new rotors. These rotors are, well, they're purchased from G8only.com. Shout out to Joe LaBruza, thank you. But they're from BrakePerformance.com, which is what is currently on the car. Along with the pads, they're actually from the same place. They're dirt cheap, and I don't have any complaints. So I was happy to buy the same stuff again, or buy from the same company again. They're heavy. They're heavy as all hell. They're not high end by any stretch, but these haven't cracked. The ones I have on the car, they haven't cracked. They've been through a decent amount of abuse, and they're still showing plenty of life in them. Like I said, the only reason I'm going with these rotors is because I got the new pads. And also, I'll be using my new Kobalt Impact whatever, since I just got that for my birthday. So, yay. Let's see, what else? I took notes. Turning to my notes. Yep, the gap was about 1.5 inches, a little bit more than 1.5 inches, so we'll measure that when we put the car back down, so that's going to be a thing. And, yeah, and I'll give a quick initial review of the brakes once they're on the car. All right, we're about the halfway point on the rear end. Figured I'd just throw a little update. The control arm is in on this side, driver's side. Went in without really any issue. I tried my best to get the alignment marks correct. You can see back there that bolt right there, it's got a little red ink splotch from the last alignment, so I'm hoping I got it close enough. Probably still going to take it down and get it aligned. Everything's good there. There's the old control arm. It fit right in. The bushing is a little different going into the cradle. It's a little smaller. Actually, you can see it right here. This is the new control arm about to go on this side. The bushing for the stock G8 is as big around as that. It's still got the metal washer right there, so I don't think there's going to be any issue with that. But I guess time will tell. Now, I really wanted to make this little update video. One, this little Kobalt thing is badass. It's awesome. Very glad I got it. Thank you to my wife for hooking me up with the gift cards to get that bad boy. And here, these bolts. I marked this one as a 2. Mark this one as a 1. Here's why. Number 1 goes right here on the knuckle. I already took it apart. You know, actually it goes like, it goes like that. All right, the washers or the nuts on the other side. That one goes in there. Number 2 comes through the shock. All right. What you'll notice, these are exact same 18 millimeter, but the shock bolt's a little bit longer. I know from experience, if you flip-flop them, they'll both go in, they'll both bolt up, everything's good, but you'll get a horrible rubbing sound. Sounds like something is like bad, wrong, about to come apart in the rear end, and what it is this guy here is shorter for a reason, because otherwise the end of the bolt will rub up against a little piece of the knuckle inside behind the brake rotor, and that causes a squeak. So I've seen those on forums, people having a rear end squeak and don't know what it is. Check to see if you've had your bolts redone. All right, new update later. And here's the finished product. It's also a week past my last update. Woo, magic of the internet. Let's go over what happened. Boom. We've now got just slotted, not slotted and drilled rotors. The pads have been bedded in. The Carbotechs went on just fine. It was just figuring out how they went into the caliper. 2 of the pads had tabs on them in the center, or like little bumps, and 2 pads didn't. So you just had to figure out how that went. There weren't any instructions, so that wasn't too bad. Bedded in, everything's solid, good to go. And we'll cruise on back to the back. And the 5th gen Camaro 1LE control arms is a success. It actually gave me exactly what I wanted. It gave me more than what I wanted, to be honest. That fender gap, I wanted an extra 1/2 inch. On the driver's side here, I got about almost 7/8 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch. A little bit more than I wanted, but as a whole package, the car looks good. No real complaints, and I've driven it around a few times, gone over some pretty gnarly bumps, and no rubs whatsoever, that was the objective. On the passenger side, oddly enough, it didn't go up as much. So I started with the driver's side being lower than the passenger side, and now both sides are about equal. So go figure. Interesting note, with those control arms though, I lost a little bit of adjustability in the rear end. Like I said, I just got the alignment done. And in the rear, we went from a max negative camber of 2 degrees to now the best they could do is a negative 1.7. So that's going to be fine, because honestly the car was fine with the rear end. If anything, it had a little bit of an understeer issue. I tightened up that rear sway bar, by the way. I went to the middle hole instead of the softer hole. So we'll know at the next October Autocross event how she handles. That'll be the final shakedown run before the state champs in November. Hope to see everybody out there. It's a Martin Sports Car Club. Anybody who watches this, at least. Anybody who wants to run their car and see what they've got. If you've got a G8, please bring it out. I need friends. So yeah, and enter in the Cam C class. That would be awesome. But yeah, good times. Car looking solid. The control arms were what I needed, and I can't think of anything else to add to this video. So I'm going to wrap it up and say bye, buddy.